It has been 10 days since the Oklahoma teacher walkout began last Monday. Dave Morris, alongside my colleague from the Oklahoman, Mr. Ben Felder, here in studio today. We're not outside the state capitol.
Yeah, kind of a change of pace. It would have been nice though, lovely weather outside, but a little quieter. Not so many bullhorns and marching bands going behind us.
And people chanting, what do we want, when do we want it, those sort of things. Although, I will say this, in the background, Allied Arts, OKC, our friends from Allied Arts, are in the Oklahoman today. So you may hear some singing and some festivities, and that's okay.
Yeah, feel at home.
Lots to dive into from the walkout outside the state capitol today. I need to ask you about crowd size on the outside and the inside. Yesterday you indicated this was perhaps winding down. I suspect we're seeing more of that as more and more schools go back to, or more and more schools say they're going back or having class, teachers going back to class. But also filing period began at the Capitol today, 3-day period, Wednesday through Friday, and so we saw some teachers filing to run for office. But let's start with the crowd size. What did you see?
Yeah, so I was at the Capitol most of the day, and you know, if you talk to teachers all of the last 2 weeks, they'll tell you that crowd size does matter. I mean, it's part of the show of force that they are wanting to show the legislature as they look out the window. I think today was probably our smallest crowd. Well, it's not small by any means. There were still several thousand teachers out there, but after Monday, which was our biggest demonstration, I think by far, it was natural that we were going to see a little bit of a dip on Tuesday, and then I think it kind of went down a little bit more today. We knew of a few schools that were going back, including Luther, so that may have impacted things as well. And some more schools said that they're going to go back into session tomorrow. But it has seemed like it has kind of dwindled a little bit. Once again, I don't want to shortchange them. It was still a raucous environment out there. There were bands playing. There were plenty of people packing the inside of the Capitol. Still long lines to get in. But if we are going to use the crowd as a metric of sorts, it definitely shows that maybe it's we are kind of on the home stretch. Now I did talk to Ed Allen, who's the president of the Oklahoma City Teachers Union, and he said it does feel like that there kind of is an end in sight. He didn't want to predict on what that day would look like. I will tell you that I wouldn't be surprised if all schools are back in session next Monday. OEA does have a permit for next week, and this thing is still fluid and it changes sometimes on an hour-by-hour basis. But it does feel like, as we wrap up the second week of this walkout, that a lot of school leaders and teachers are saying, you know what, it might be time to go back.
Oklahoma City is out again tomorrow. They, again, announce on a day-by-day basis.
Yeah, and so Oklahoma City, I believe Edmond, Tulsa, some of those larger districts are going to continue to stay out tomorrow. But we have seen some large ones going back. Bartlesville is going back tomorrow near Tulsa. Moore, which is the 4th largest school district in the state, they're going back tomorrow. Shawnee is going back tomorrow. And I think, like I said, school leaders are starting to kind of feel the pressure a little bit themselves. I mean, they need to start getting some of these state-mandated tests complete. There's still that pressure from kind of the community. I think the community support has been pretty strong. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Even parents I've talked to who've had to kind of struggle through this have said, hey, we understand what teachers are doing. We're willing to put up with it for a little bit. But, as we face the idea of going into a third week, I think a lot of school boards and school administrators are saying, it might be time to really take a step back and look what we've gotten, and which is quite a bit. We may get into that in a moment, but that it's time to get back in the classroom and serve our students there. You
spoke with Ed Allen from the Oklahoma City AFT. You also spoke with Catherine Bishop from OEA today.
Yeah, Vice President of the OEA. I straight up asked her, I was like, what are the likelihood that we're going to be here on Monday? And she said, I wouldn't even want to wager a guess. And I mean, she probably has no idea, really. She told me that, hey, this is a day-by-day decision that we're making here. Today, the OEA started to put out some information kind of showing all the things that this movement has been able to achieve, both before the walkout, right before with the teacher pay raises and some other things, and then even last week with some of the additional funding measures that we saw. They're claiming about 95% of their ask, at least in the first year, when it comes to recurring revenue, has been achieved. To me, I take that as a sign that they are, claiming victory, not saying they're done yet. And Catherine said, hey, we're not done yet. We're still meeting with legislative leaders, trying to see what else we can get. But it seems like there's the beginning stages of saying, hey, if this thing is going to wrap up this week, let's point and look at what we've done. And what we've done is still pretty big. And I think, and Catherine said, at some point we're going to have to kind of take a step back from this and take a deep breath and realize that there really was some historic measures done when you really think about the political landscape here, even though I'm sure for a lot of teachers, that are being called back to school tomorrow and maybe by next Monday, are going to kind of be a little disappointed and that they didn't feel like they got as much as they wanted during the walkout. But quite a bit was achieved for public education, and even before the walkout, I think the threat of the walkout had everything to do with that.
Teachers might be happy to just be back in the classrooms and not hear the chanting and the bullhorns out there.
I mean, teachers love what they do. I mean, that's, and I've
they want to get back to the students. You heard that a lot from the teachers.
I heard that a lot. I mean, so much so that they were, I mean, there are schools that are conducting class at the Capitol. I mean, they are building schools at the Capitol. They want to go back to their school so much. And, you know, I actually caught a moment where there was a teacher in the hallway and some of his students were up there and they saw him what looked like for the first time since the walkout began, and they were excited to see him. And so, yeah, I mean, I definitely think even the teachers that would be frustrated to go back, and don't get me wrong, I think there's still plenty of teachers that if you ask them today at the Capitol that are ready to stay for the long haul, you know, chain themselves to the building. But even them, I think they're, you know, they miss their work, they miss what they do. A lot of teachers have told me what they're doing during this walkout is harder work than what they do in the classroom.
Dave Morris here in the Oklahoman's video studio alongside Ben Felder. We're talking about the Oklahoma teacher walkout. I mentioned the filing period began today on Wednesday, April 11th. It runs through Friday, April 13th. And several teachers filed today. Yeah, we did see several. I mean, people may remember that a couple years ago we saw the so-called Teachers Caucus. About 30 current and former educators ran for office. Most of them lost for a lot of reasons. Mainly, it's hard to beat an incumbent. You know, your first time into a race, it's very challenging. So it's going to be interesting this time around to see how many of those were going to run again, and also the fact that we have this the candidate filing period coinciding with the walkout. How many educators were going to throw their hat in the ring? Now, it's not as simple as just, you know, they're out there on the Capitol steps and they're frustrated and say, you know what, I'm going to go in and run for office. There's a fee that you have to pay or get signatures, so it takes a little bit of work. But we did see several educators. In fact, Cindy Ralston, who's on the screen right there, a 30-year educator from Haskell, and her son, who's running as well for State House. She said, hey, I've got the experience of being a teacher for 30 years, and he said, hey, I've got the experience of being a teacher's son for 27 years. So a lot of educators are running for office. It's going to be interesting to see how many incumbents don't run. I think that's kind of a storyline really nationally right now. Incumbents just kind of feeling like the mood in politics is not something that they really feel invited to be a part of anymore. I do think we're going to see some incumbents choose not to run, you know, this year. And now you've got some more teacher candidates that are going to hope to try to ride the wave of this walkout momentum into November. It was interesting. You asked those teachers from Haskell when they decided to run. And it wasn't like a spur-of-the-moment thing. This is something they had been considering.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we just woke up on April 2nd and all of a sudden public education was a big issue in this state. It's been building for a long time. And so I think, you know, when you looked at the failed state question for teacher pay raises in 2016 and maybe some other cuts that the legislature has done in recent years, that's really what, you know, bred the interest in some of these educators to run for office. It just so happened that the filing period happens during the walkout, and for many of them, you know, Carrie Hicks is a teacher from Deer Creek who's been running since last July, and, you know, I asked her today, I said, well, this is kind of probably advantageous a little bit for you to kick off your candidacy as a teacher, you know, making public education the central thing, and there's a walkout going on. And she said, well, I don't know if I'd call it advantageous, but she said it definitely underlines the point that I've been trying to make. And she did say that over the last couple of weeks that she's been knocking doors, that more and more voters are bringing up education. In fact, she says, I go through my spiel, I tell them, hi, I'm running for Senate, I'm a mother, I'm a teacher, and a lot of people say, oh, you're a teacher, you have my vote. So we'll have to see what that looks like in November. I'm always going to be skeptical of if we'll see a wave election until we see it. But if there is a wave election in November, whatever that ends up looking like, I think we can stop and point back to this time and say, well, they did shut down schools for 2 weeks and then had somewhat of an impact.
It's good stuff as always. Ben Felder among my colleagues here at the Oklahoman who are all over this story. You can follow along online at newsok.com. We have lots of videos, lots of stories, great photo galleries as well, along with our social media efforts on Twitter and Facebook. It's pretty strong. Ben, again, thanks for your time. Much appreciated. You'll be back out there tomorrow.
I'll be back at the Capitol tomorrow. Just a quick breather here in the what feels like a slow-paced newsroom compared to what's been out there. But yep, be back at the Capitol tomorrow.
Filing period continues. Again, that runs through Friday. And again, more coverage can be found in upcoming editions of the Oklahoman and online at newsok.com.